Thanks for choosing us. Well, this afternoon, President John Dramani Mahama disclosed that more than 200 corruption-related cases are being investigated as part of his government's commitment to accountability and the recovery of stolen state resources. So far, he said 80 individuals had been interrogated and several cases already progressing in court. President Mahama said under the Operation Recover All Loot initiative, the perceived delay in pursuing anybody who had dissipated or stolen state funds did not amount to an abandoned fight against corruption. Instead, he said it was a necessary commitment to the fight against corruption, the rule of law, fairness, as well as judicial integrity. He disclosed that this is something that his administration is looking at. All this came up yesterday during his media encounter. Here excerpts.
Is under active investigation with about 80 people interrogated so far. Several prosecutions have begun, progressing steadily and remaining firmly on course. In the Republic versus Adom-Otchere and 3 others, the state has submitted witness statements together with all other documents, and trial has commenced. And the first of 3 prosecution witnesses have been called and have been cross-examined by counsel for the accused person. With the SkyTrain case, for instance, the prosecutors have secured a trial date, as all preliminary matters have been concluded and the trial is set to commence. For the National Service Authority case, due to its expansive nature, charges have been drafted and will be filed as soon as the legal year begins against the following person: the Republic versus Osei Sibe, the Republic versus Eric Nyaku, the Republic versus Gifty Owari. Also for the National Cathedral, we are awaiting a forensic audit from the Auditor General. Additionally, charges have been drafted and are ready for filing in the case of Republic versus Wuntumi and Akuntamaine. The Economic and Organized Crime Office, EOCO, is finalizing its report with respect to Exim Bank transactions. Dockets are in preparation for the buffer stock case and the drip equipment case. Investigations are ongoing into the African Cup of Nations case, the Mart Set case, and approximately 20 other cases currently. Let me be clear, every single case of corruption that needs to be investigated is being looked into. And once evidence is found to ground the prosecution, that will happen and happen swiftly.
Well, the president also spoke about the fight against illegal mining. For those of you wondering what his stance is about it and what this administration is doing to fight the canker, here was his response yesterday.
Mr. President, you've already talked about how important it is to safeguard the water bodies and the forest reserves. But over the past 9 months since you became president, the turbidity levels in the water bodies have worsened, according to the Water Resources Commission. Ghana Water Company supports this by saying that they've had to shut down several treatment plants because the water sources are too polluted for them to process. Besides that, we know that there have been increased incursions into forest reserves for Galamsey. We've also heard from your transport minister that we are importing more excavators than ever before, over 200 a day. My question about this is about its effect on the economy. Recently, the finance minister has been touting the work of the Gold Board led by Sami Jemfi for being an anchor to the economy, especially when it comes to stabilizing the city. My question is, does your government know, is your government able to tell the difference between gold from Galamsey and gold from regular concessions when the Gold Board is buying gold from local producers? And could it be, because so much of it comes from Galamsey, could that be the reason why we are seeing some reluctance recently in the fight against Galamsey?
I never expected or I never deluded myself that the fight against illegal gold mining or Galamsey was going to be an event. I mean, definitely, there's no magic wand. The decay has eaten so much over the last 8 years that it's going to take a lot of work to be able to overcome it. And I didn't expect that in 18 months we would declare victory in the fight. As the livelihoods of about 4 million Ghanaians is on small-scale mining. And so it's going to be a process. It's not going to be an event. But we will not give up. We have a determination to get on top of it. The Gold Board was introduced as part of reforms. And if the Gold Board was not introduced, I mean, those who were taking the profits from the small-scale mining sector were the foreign traders who were taking that money away. And because of the lack of jobs, jobless growth for several decades, there are a lot of young people who are coming out of school who have no job work to do. And so for them, that is the only livelihood. And so we must not think just about chasing them all over the place without providing alternatives for them. Because the alternative is that they should stay home and starve or go out and do something deviant. With regards to excavators, we're enforcing the law that you must get the permit before the excavator is put on a ship. That is what the law has been, but it was not followed. And so they let the excavator land before they come and ask the Ministry of Transport for a permit. And so we've informed all the dealers that you cannot load an excavator onto a ship until you have gotten a permit. In the meantime, a lot of excavators have arrived at the port. And recently, somebody said they were being released at midnight to their owners and things. That's not true. What happens was there were so many that they had occupied a huge area of the port and congested the port. And so we found the land near Shire Hills, near the military installation. And the Field Engineers Regiment and others have been given charge to move the excavators from the port to that area so that they can free up space in the port. And they do that in the night because of traffic in the daytime. So in the night, they have the payloaders moving the excavators out of the port to the designated areas where they are supposed to be held. And before any of those excavators is released, they must be tracked, they must have a tracker on them, they must be registered by the owner of the excavator, and we must know the purpose for which the excavator has been imported. Because the construction industry also imports excavators, and so you cannot put a blanket ban on importation of excavators just because you think that every excavator is going to go into the illegal mining industry. Even the big mining companies that have licenses import excavators. And so we want to know who is importing the excavators, who it is going to. We want to be able to put a tracker on it and be able to trace that excavator wherever it is in the country. We called off the IGP's anti-Galamsey task force because they are supposed to coordinate with NIMOS. That is the National Anti-Illegal Mining Operations Secretariat. Unfortunately, they were not doing that. So every little commander in any this thing gets up, Galamsey phobia, they can't tell who is licensed, they can't tell who is not licensed. And so it was just like an attack on the whole small-scale mining industry. And so what we said was they should freeze their action. They should synchronize it with the National Anti-Galamsey Operational Secretariat so that they can be directed exactly to where to go in terms of the anti-Galamsey fight. While we're fighting Galamsey, it doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all for everybody to get up. Anybody gets up, puts on a helmet, puts on a jacket, and says, I'm anti-Galamsey. They say, we're not looking for chaos. We're looking to do it, in a scientific manner.
Well, the president still spoke about the economy during that media encounter yesterday. Here's his response as to how the economy is faring.
Indicators have turned into a positive trajectory. and buoyed by the ratings you also referenced and investor confidence, do you think that that gives enough scope for you to go back to the international capital market, maybe for your first Eurobond after the defaults?
We're quite happy with the outcomes of the reforms that we have been implementing in the economy. And we have survived without going to the capital markets. We've survived without borrowing. Who could have thought some years ago that Ghana's economy could be run without going to the external market to borrow? And yet, we've survived. And so we shouldn't be in a hurry to go back to the capital market. All we've done is to reorder our expenditure and push funds to areas that are of priority. And so that's all we've done. Fiscal discipline, not spending money on wasteful, political interventions and all that. And that is already showing the successes in the market. I mean, we've gone from negative 3.4% on the primary balance to positive 1.1 as at now. And by the end of the year, we'll achieve the target. I'm sure we'll overachieve the target of positive 1.5. And so it's all about discipline in expenditure. And so for me as the president, I would not favor a quick return to the international capital market. I think we should go like this for a while and consolidate the economy before we look at external financing.
Well, to set the tone for last night's media encounter, the GJA president was the first to ask a question about the welfare of journalists, and this was the president's response.
Also, assault on journalists are on the rise, and I know this is of great concern to you as a journalist yourself and a proud member of the Inky fraternity. The Ghana Journalists Association would therefore like to know what your government is doing to address this disturbing trend.
I've condemned assaults on journalists in any form. Journalists are doing their job, and their job is to bring news to the doorsteps of our people and to inform them, educate and entertain them. And so at every event you will have journalists there. Unfortunately, some security personnel have developed a penchant for just harassing journalists. And so it's a matter of educating people. It's a matter of, sanctioning people who assault journalists. And I've been speaking with my president of GJA, saying that we're going to bring them together with the security agencies so that they must carry out an awareness amongst their people who provide security at events, that if you see a journalist at an event, he is also doing a job like you, the security person, are doing your job. And so you don't have the right to assault them or to manhandle them. And so we'll keep working at it. I mean, definitely, as a member of the GJA, a lifetime member of the GJA, there's no way I'll condone assault of journalists in any form.
Well, another key question that came up last night was on the proposals by ECG as well as the Ghana Water Company Limited to increase tariffs. This was the president's response to that question.
Adom-Otchere. Masembisa efa enkania boye ne yenim se ECG e propose 225%. Yenim se memu entumo by be se 2.45. In July, it was by 14.75. Then now see him say a bine one is so the 24 economy or the Bayejuma na Ghana for the Duenya Mufaso. It is say ECG the 225% increment by Yenim Hawa proposal no any home commodity becone percentage of the Betina. Ebeko Ghana for Benana company say anoyedin. Yebisa se betumenya nsusanso e wo 24 economy no so Ghana fobutum e na ebiom so aban be hwese obeso asene eye subsidy ama omanfo ho atoma na
minu aba obusa ECG there no so mwaye ama may the same for both utilities. ECG so I propose 200 and something %, but I know interest PRC budget tum say omuntimi ento electricity tariffs musa Ombeshe nyoma electricity production mu to say fuel nesan nyoma ni na ansana omo ahwe senior omo de tariff ne besi na emrepi no adekronti a ye tariffs akosro ne se nipa bebre entua enti wo hwe ECG say ye ka say commercial and technical losses are almost 42%. I just say of electricity almost ton no omutimi eje eho aketua of only about 58%. Na eno anka wiase afa na bia anka saa edwuma ya se wo ye edwuma bia na bibia wo ton bia wonya just return of 58%. Anka by now edwuma na gu nso akoya aban de se ekire so na aban abeboa ekire so na aban abeboa enti afi de ya sesa omo hwe edwuma no so na ya kenya omo se omo sorry na omo nante na nea onkrofo mu wia iram kania no ni adini na yencheche omo na yentwe omo aso efise se yen na atwa ebema eton no ebo na bafom enti ejuma yebegu so aye.
Well, yesterday's encounter was packed, and this afternoon we're exploring the many issues that came up at that media encounter. My guest will be joining me in the studio shortly as we dissect some of the key things that have come up when it comes to Galamsey, the president's response. Already we know that the Ghana coalition against Galamsey is not pleased with the president's response. We'll delve into that, all the details and fallouts from yesterday's encounter after this quick turn. Thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. Well, I promised you a heated conversation, and that's exactly what I'm going to deliver today. On the show today, I'm joined by one of Ghana's finest when it comes to the media landscape, Paul Adom-Otchere. He's host of perhaps one of the most longest-running current affairs shows on television, Good Evening Ghana. But he describes himself as a news reporter. Yes. Also on the program is host of the Super Morning Show. You know him always, the one and only Kojo Yangsing on Joy 99.7 FM. And he joins the conversation here as we look at fallouts from yesterday's media encounter. Later joining me on the show will be Kemini Amano as well as Alfred Okanse. Join the conversation later on the show. I'll start with Kojo. Because the question you delivered yesterday is what exactly triggered tongue-waggling this morning, the president's response when it comes to illegal mining. Were you pleased, really, with his response as to how he plans to deal with the canker?
Thank you. First of all, if I may just say that if Paul Adom-Otchere is a reporter, then I'm a messenger. Yesterday, one of the very obvious facts about John Mahama was on display. The fact that he's a very comfortable communicator. A format like this is perfect for him. Ask your question. He will decide exactly which part of it to answer. There's nothing you can do about it because you can't ask a follow-up. Okay, that's the format of these press encounters, presidential press encounters. It's not John Mahama's invention, but he excels at it. Because that is his wheelhouse. Very comfortable speaking, off the cuff. He recalls, details and shares them in a very conversational manner, which is easy to listen to. But it also means that you sometimes miss when he doesn't quite answer your question. In my case, I knew before I asked the question that I would have difficulty getting him to address all the issues I had in my mind, because I could only ask one question. So if you notice, I tried to be a little clever, and I layered my question. So there were about 5 different things I was asking him in the one question. That part of it seemed to work, because eventually the answer he gave was perhaps the longest answer he gave to any question that night. He spent about 10 minutes answering my question.
Indeed.
Dealing with various aspects of what I had raised. But the format worked to his favor. So he kind of, said what he wants to say about the different issues I raised. For me, the most important issue was about the gold board. I was curious about whether or not gold board even knew the difference between legal and illegal gold when it comes to their purchases. the president actually admitted that, well, even if they are buying illegal gold, at least it means that the money is coming to government, rather than the previous situation before the gold board, which was that foreign, buyers were making all the money from the export of gold. So right in there was an admission that indeed the gold board is most likely buying Galamsey gold. That's problematic for many reasons. However, fans of the president might point to that as an example of his honesty, where he didn't attempt to, obfuscate the issue or, dance around it, but actually came out to say what it is. I mean, you could appreciate him for that, but you can't miss the fact that he has actually said the gold board buys Galamsey gold. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? How will the international community respond to this? Because there are standards. Conflict diamonds are certainly shunned by the global community. So how will Galamsey gold be received?
Another key thing he made mention of yesterday that was quite interesting for me, Kojo, was when he said, and I'm quoting him verbatim, we cannot put a blanket ban on the importation of excavators. That sort of contradicts the transport minister's initial stance that as far back as June, we're placing a ban on importation of excavators. We want to track those ones that are already in the system. What was your reading into that response?
So again, that was an answer to another part of my question. And I thought from the very beginning, when I heard the transport minister's answer, all that time back, I thought that there needed to be a clearer strategy to deal with these excavators. It beggars belief that a country the size of Ghana imports more excavators than Nigeria. It doesn't make sense. What are we constructing? So even in the midst of all the legal business that might require excavators, there is a blatant and obvious importation of excavators for purposes unknown. Just banning them seems a bit simplistic. What the president was saying about tagging and tracking them seems a bit more of a sustainable way forward.
But we've heard from DVLA tell us that they're facing challenges with that system already.
Because they don't have the trackers.
They have the trackers. Unfortunately, once the excavators exit the port, we have individuals taking out the trackers from the excavators and placing them on Uber vehicles. And that was a key concern. We have him on record saying that on Asempa. So even that structure in itself is flawed. I'll come to you, Kojo, for your response on that. But let me just get the brief reaction of Paul Adom-Otchere. Yesterday's media encounter, we're starting with illegal mining and the president's response. Were you pleased?
You mean with the question of good afternoon to your viewers.
Good
Thank you very much.
afternoon.
My first time on this program, and I'm happy to be here.
You're welcome.
You're asking about the question of Galamsey?
Yes, and the president's response, some of the key things he spoke about.
Before I do that, I want to put the matter in some perspective.
Okay.
The whole purpose of the presidential press conference is towards deepening democracy and transparency.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about 35 years of doing it and having not been successful at it. And I say we have not been successful because if you look at the history, President Kufuor did, I think, one press conference and didn't do another one. Professor Mills, I believe, did one and didn't do another one. In the first term of President Mahama, I believe he did two, one of which was big on Gitmo. Again, you were subject of that one as well. Yep. So I'm guessing he did just one or two and he didn't continue.
Yeah.
President Akufo-Addo did one, I believe, or was it two? I remember.
Two, I think.
Two. I think he did two and didn't continue. All of these heads of state tell us that it's going to be a yearly affair, and somehow they don't continue. So what we are celebrating today is something we have seen before, so not much to celebrate. We have to wait to see how regularly President Mahama will do it. And if you look at the thread, they all seem to do it quite early. President Kufuor did it within his 100 days. He didn't do it again. Professor Mills did it within the first year. He didn't do it again. And the reason I'm guessing is because by the time they're in their third year, their final year, there's a bit too much to answer. And so they take the opportunity of the non-compulsory nature of these press conferences, which is itself a very big negative on our democracy, because the system that the 1992 Constitution gives us lacks accountability in many, many ways. Accountability for the elected leader. He need not go to Parliament to do anything. We have relegated everything to become a political question. A political question means that whatever he does, the ballot box will determine. So leave him alone. That's the kind of democracy we've had. So at this time, having a press conference by the president is not that exciting. It's worse also because the format has not helped to deepen the accountability. I was quite excited about the time he chose. And I think increasingly we need to start moving those important government things to evening and do it for television. So as many Ghanaians as possible can participate in it by watching it. So that was a very different, it was new and it's a big plus to move it into the evening. So people have finished their work and they can all concentrate and look at it. But the format was old. It was, you ask 4 questions, so you are not able to engage the president very well. So by the time you finish, we all go, you can leave the press conference with a question unanswered. And that
Indeed, and that's what happened yesterday.
That should not happen
Quite
again.
A number of journalists didn't get the opportunity to ask their questions.
1, you don't get the opportunity, which is okay. 2, the question is actually not answered, which is not okay. And the reason why we don't get opportunities is that whilst we have a presidential press corps, and if we had regularized these things, it's the presidential press corps alone who are going to have the press conference. So if we know that the president of Ghana will address the press at the end of every month, we can start like that. In America, it's every week. Donald Trump can do 2 press conferences in a week. That's a culture. It's not in any law, but that's a culture that has been established for the American Constitution. It's a big part of accountability and transparency of governance that we need to take very seriously. But anyway, that said, the press conference occurred. It's an easy press conference for any president, and it becomes a problem when over the years you see that 1 or 2 questions sort of rattle the government a little bit. Why is it an easy press conference? No one can accuse the government right now of not being able to achieve major manifesto promises. You can't accuse the government of employment because they have 9 months in office. The big ticket things that affect government, you can't accuse them of energy supply, even if there was no real energy stability, which is, we have energy stability now. If we didn't have energy stability, it's the government has been in charge for just 8 months over the last 8 years. You really cannot pin an energy situation on him. If you don't have water, you can't pin it on him yet. If there are high food prices, you might not even be able to pin it on him.
So the timing is wrong.
No, the timing is easy. I'm making the point that it's easy for any president, so I'm coming to the point.
Okay.
So coming into a press conference like that, no one expects the president to be rattled because there's no real big ticket anything that you can pin on him at this time of his presidency. You can do that 2027 because then his first budget is November. It will have taken place and you can see what has happened. No contracts. I don't think the government has given any contracts since they started. So all of those things, transparency, breach of public procurement, all of those big ticket issues are not available. So he should be able to sail through. What happened then was a quiet comparison that the journalists were making between what you said in your campaign and what has happened now. It is only those issues that you can pick up and deal with. That is why Galamsey became tops. Exactly. Because Galamsey was tops in the campaign. That is why the other thing that also mattered, but perhaps hasn't become tops, is the question that was asked by Adom-Otchere relating to the processes that eventually removed the Chief Justice. Lawyers are currently still discussing this issue about the conclusion of the matter that the Chief Justice has been removed from as a Chief Justice and also as a Supreme Court judge. Because lawyers are finding out that the process that removed the Chief Justice, Article 1466, deals with only removal of Chief Justice. Article 1464 deals with removal of Supreme Court judges. So that we are finding out that if you were to remove a person from being Chief Justice and also being a Supreme Court judge, you must have to go through the process outlined in Article 1464 for Supreme Court justices and Article 1466 for Chief Justices, so that by now that they have finished the process, they should be taking her through another process. This is what the lawyers are, every law firm is looking at it and is confused that, where did we come? What's happening here?
And legally, is there precedence for this to even serve as a reference?
Because there's no precedent. And because some of us think that that article was never put there intended to be used except maybe once in 100 years, all of these spaces are available. And so the government said, we have removed you as both this and that. But the process that the government announced was a process that limits itself to removing a Chief Justice, not a Justice on the Supreme Court. So these were the 2 big issues that came up. Both issues, we didn't get the answers from the president. The president spoke the truth on Galamsey. It has always been true that dealing with Galamsey has several strands. And one of the things that will concern anybody who is managing the public purse is how much money you may be losing with the state of emergency. This was the situation in 2023, it was the situation in 2024, and is the situation today.
But isn't the party singing a different song while in opposition?
That's what I'm coming to.
You agreed that there's a need to declare a state of emergency.
The president spoke the truth.
Now you're telling us it's your last resort.
The president spoke the truth. Maybe during the campaign, not as much truth was said. And that is what the journalists are pointing out. Because everything President Mahama said was true. If you declare a state of emergency on all mining, you are likely to see a drop in your mining revenue. The finance minister is going to get upset with the president and tell you that that's the point Adom Ketia made, that you cannot declare a state of emergency. It's going to affect the finances. And I'm suggesting to you that the people who ran the campaign about state of emergency were aware that the state of emergency was going to affect the economy, and perhaps they salivated that process because it was campaign time. It brings us to the question about what we should do in campaign time and what we should not do in campaign time.
Shouldn't we be telling the people of Ghana the truth?
Yes.
Rather than lying to us during your campaign message?
I don't know whether they lied to us.
Okay.
I'm just saying that what the President Mahama said, he's been president before. Anybody who's been around government will know that a declaration of a state of emergency, whilst it may solve the problem temporarily, is going to occasion a significant loss of revenue. And if you are president of a third world country, a developing country, and you are coming from COVID and Ukraine, and they are putting pressure on you to declare a state of emergency, your best bet is to access other alternatives. Send the police there, send the military there, all of these solutions that have hardly worked, especially as the president said with the gold price right now. This is the problem. So the president is putting himself, President Mahama knew that this question was going to come. He was going to put himself in the firing line. He knew that. What is the solution? Tell them, let's go around it and see what we can do about it. Convert it to a political question. Let's solve other problems. We have an election in 3 years. It's enough time for us to turn ourselves around. But at the end of the day, the journalists are going to say, okay, President Mahama lied. And then what happens after that? That's what politicians do. He put himself in the firing line because here he sits. He needs to tell the people the truth. And he's also concerned about the purse, the money that's coming with him. That's what he started with. That Gold Board has been able to increase revenue from gold as a result of Galamsey. That itself is quite dangerous, and that's what Kojo was alluding to. We don't want a situation where when the gold price tumbles, these international organizations are going to say, like they said to us in 2008 about cocoa, that they were not going to buy Ghana cocoa because kids were working on the cocoa farms, and President Kufuor's government had to hire Rosa Whittaker to go all the farms and develop a report for the United Nations. This information that has been put out there, potentially, can have people coming to tell Ghana in 2027 that, look, Ghana's gold, you can't buy it because there's an admission that the gold is bought from people who are destroying water bodies. So that's the only little part that is concerning.
But how can we even eliminate them from the value chain?
Eliminate who?
The illegal miners and the gold they're offering to the Gold Board.
Well, so...
Is it even practical?
So we need to make a choice between buying that gold, spending time, as the president said, taking them to Australia, all that time you are going, spending the time, they are still mining. We have seen the number of excavators coming into the country, which itself is disaster. That information is very disastrous. And why are we not doing anything about that information? Just that information alone, whether it's going to be kept at Michelle Camp at 1 billion, whether it's going to be kept, there has to be a serious interrogation by civil society of that information. Why is Ghana, 30 million people, sitting on this mass line, importing excavators more than any country in the world? That is enough information for us to go gaga. But here we are hearing explanations from minister said this, and what are the excavators coming to do? Is it coming through the Ministry of Roads and Transport? Are they building roads? What are they going to do? Point is, you can tell where the excavators are going, and that's serious. The Galamsey is spread across Ashanti region, Central region, Eastern region, Bono region. Now, if you're going to declare state of emergency in all of these areas, surely you're going to lose significant revenue. Somebody must do that. Is it going to give a permanent answer to the Galamsey question and bring the water bodies back? Maybe, maybe not. But is it a political decision of the political office holder? Is it NDC's fault? Is it MPP's fault? If we say that it was MPP's fault then surely it's NDC's fault today. Is that how we want to run the country? I'm passionate about this because I was during the campaign complaining about the things that are being used to campaign are very dangerous. And abuses was held at us. We were you Akufo-Addo people and you Akufo-Addo this. If it was MPP's fault that the water was black, it is NDC's fault today. I believe it's not MPP's fault and it's not NDC's fault. It has to be a concerted effort of the way in which our systems run. Until we accept it as that and we are happy to take the easy solution as politicians, just blame the government for it without doing a proper assessment of what the government is doing, sitting down to look at their policy levels and deal with them on policy. Show the Ghanaian people why your salaries are not being paid, why your water is not run. This is the policy of the government. This is a government of ineptitude. We don't do that. We go to something that the people are naturally angry about.
So it's all talk for us, but I'll come back to you to make that point. Kojo, the key concern being raised was when the president told us yesterday that the IGP anti-Galamsey task force has been withdrawn. And the key concern by most of us listening to him yesterday was, why exactly would we want to do that at this point in time?
Well, you see why follow-up questions are important and why this format just does not allow for probing. Because, well, yeah, he said it. He said that, look, what the IGP's men were doing was chaotic. They would go out there and simply just go to any mining concession and stop them from mining. Whether they were legal or not, they didn't care. They were just stopping all mining. So there needed to be some scientific approach. So they've been asked to withdraw and reframe their mission and then go back and do it right and work with NIMOS so that it's all, synchronized and all of this. Now, I listened to the president say this with my follow-up question on my lips. But of course, I wasn't going to get the opportunity to ask it. My follow-up question was going to be, IGP's men are shutting down legal small-scale mining concessions in forest reserves.
Interesting question.
Who gave them a license to go and mine in a forest reserve?
And that brings us to Paul's point, really.
State? Yeah, what is the loss to the state of shutting them down? Because clearly there is a loss to it. Otherwise, why would the president decide that, okay, let's reassess and go back? Why? Because it was causing a loss to the state. So the question I asked, how I linked the turbidity of the water to the forest reserves, to the excavators, to Gold Board, to the IGP. All those 5 things were connected in one simple way. I was simply trying to draw a value chain on the side of those who benefit from Galamsey. That this is your value chain as a beneficiary of Galamsey. And he laid it all up and answered exactly so.
Let me come in at this point and bring in just excerpts of a statement put out by the Ghana Coalition Against Galamsey. They put out a statement this morning, and one key thing they said, first paragraph of their statement, is that on Galamsey, the president did not convey the urgency required in the fight to rid the country of the environmental terrorism we are facing.
And Paul raises the question of who's to blame, right? Is it the MPP's fault? Is it the NDC's fault? Paul takes the line that, well, it's neither, right? This is a problem that transcends these two parties. Now, I want to raise the other question. Once we've dealt with the question of whose fault is it, I want to raise the question of who should fix it. And at all times, the answer to that is whoever is in government. At all times. They are the ones clothed with the power, the responsibility, the duty to stop the death of their own citizens from poisoned water. Ghana Water Company is shutting down treatment plants across the country, willy-nilly. There are people who haven't had water flow through their taps in months because of Galamsey. This is where we are today. This is not some future horrorscape of a science fiction movie I'm describing. This is happening today.
Are we making unrealistic demands when it comes to our expectations of government to deal with illegal mining?
Our demand is stop poisoning us. Is that unrealistic?
Paul, is it unrealistic? Our demands declare a state of emergency, repeal that controversial LI. Are we making unrealistic demands?
How can it be unrealistic? It's not unrealistic, except that it has to go through a bigger process. The president even mentioned Parliament. Yes, it has to go through a bigger process, but it's not unrealistic. But we also have to look at it from the angle of the holders of the purse. They are thinking What is there has to be a transparent situation in which the holders of the purse tell us that if there's a state of emergency over the next 6 months, this is the revenue we're going to lose. This revenue we're going to lose will occasion us not be able to satisfy this debt payment or repayment on time. It will not be able to let us give school feeding something on time. And so we can look at it as a nation and deal with it and get back really to the Galamsey problem. But I'm not sure whether we have any luck, because it's beginning to look like the Galamseyers have political friends. And the same as we see across the country, when your party is in power, this party, Suleiman Barama says something that I agreed with him. And I always felt the same thing, that Akufo-Addo is the president of the Fourth Republic who has taken this matter more seriously than anybody else. And I can say that because I spoke to him many times during the period. I saw the events he did. He did one in Kumasi and Accra. He even set it up at the beginning. In the end, it was heaped on him as the one responsible for the Galamsey. We are beginning to see these things, and we'll see them as time goes along, where the honesty is and where the dishonesty is. It's beginning to look like there's a new group of people who may have been doing Galamsey undercover before, but who are now doing it bolder. Is it because they think their party is in power? Is it because they think that they know the actors? Mohammed Yamin, my friend in Kumasi, the NDC guy, said something on radio, I believe it was Asempa or something like that, where he talked about the Galamsey person is a criminal, but it is because he's a criminal that somebody is a minister today. Whoa. And he said that. I mean, said that. And you try to look at the convergence of the idea, and you wonder what he means by making reference to somebody becoming a minister through Galamsey. Yes, Galamsey people may have voted one way or the other, but did they have any other influence on the election apart from just voting? That makes Yamin, the national organizer of the NDC, say that you, the NDC minister, you are a minister today because of that same boy that you call a criminal. Now, he opens up to say that he's in full defense of the people doing the work. They will never admit that they are doing Galamsey. They will say they are doing small-scale mining. In the days of the MPP, Akonta mining came up. Temahun to me said many times that he's not doing Galamsey. He's doing, in fact, President Akufo-Addo had occasion to say publicly that Akonta mining is not doing Galamsey and that they are doing small-scale mining. So they always tell you these things. What is worrying, and where you can look at the political will clearly, and that's what Erastus and others are talking about, is the decision to withdraw police. That's clear. That's very simple. The police are there. They seem to be getting something done. And then government says, police withdraw. That's, you can tell clearly that there seems to be some political will one way or the other. The police don't have microphone. They can't come and tell us if they have been asked to withdraw, what they should do or what they shouldn't do. We saw the Hanabisu episode. How did it end up? What has happened after that? Was it just drama for the movies? Was it just something that ended up as content creation?
Yeah.
So Ghanaians are beginning to see, and some civil society are beginning to see, that this Galamsey problem that was politicized really ought not to have been politicized, because those who politicize it appear to be doing worse.
Well, let's shift our attention from Galamsey, because another key concern that came up yesterday was that issue you touched on briefly before we moved on Bernard Able's question. He wanted to know if the EC chair is next in line to go. That question was never answered by the president, was it, Kojo?
Can I just say, I loved Bernard Able's question. I thought it was deep. I even texted him about it. He framed it beautifully, right? Once again, knowing that, you know, a politician will always look for the way out rather than, you know, to simply allow themselves to be trapped into a question. They'll look for the way out. So he framed it very carefully, talked about what has happened with the Chief Justice, talked about what the party members of John Mahama himself have said about the removal of the EC chair and some of the other officials there. And then asked this question that, look, are you turning into a supreme being, supreme leader? That was amusing.
And he says he's not.
Well, yeah, and then he left it there. So an actual answer to the question never came. He simply said, well, I mean, I'm a champion of democracy. I love democracy. I said that even when we become, supermajority in parliament,
we won't abuse it.
Lord it over the minority. But they have. Have they not? Parliament can't help itself. First of all, I remember when the president made that pledge at the beginning of his tenure. I think it was during his inaugural speech, when he said that they are not going to lord it over the... I remember thinking, I mean, that's a very good intention, Mr. President, but you don't control Parliament, do you? You're not supposed to. So what are you actually saying? right? Are you promising us an outcome in Parliament when there should be separation of powers? Parliament should be able to be the master of their own, destiny and decide for themselves whether they are going to lord things over the minority or not. It should be up to Parliament. But the president was here promising us that won't happen. And by the way, it's happening. It's happening. Parliament can't help itself. The majority can't help itself. They will do what they want to do. Now, you can define lording it over. I don't think they bully the minority, but they certainly have their way. They move things along without any fear of interference or obstacles from the minority. The minority gets the opportunity to say what they'll say. I think Omarkin is very loud. We hear him, even in our seat.
But when it comes to the game of numbers, really, you can't beat them. So let me come to Paul just to get his thoughts on this. On one breath, you want to ensure there's accountability. Leaders do the right thing. They do not mismanage their position. On another breath, there are concerns of political interference with the case of the EC chair, where we've had key individuals from the NDC tell us that it's time for them to go.
I think if there were follow-up questions, maybe Bernard should have put his question simply that, Mr. President, have you received a petition to remove the EC chairman? What are you doing about it? Because there's a group that has said that they have sent a petition a long time ago.
Yes.
It hasn't been...
It hasn't been looked at. They said they even sent follow-ups. Unfortunately, they're yet to get a response from the president.
The concern about this is because of the things that have been said by senior party officials of the NDC relating to the potential removal of the EC chair based on, I'm not even sure how many things it's based on. I think there's a conversation about SAL, then there's a conversation about the 2020 election process.
Indeed.
And I think she also annoyed them quite a bit by deciding not to testify personally in court so that they will have their day against her. I'm sure that also affected them. And the president has not answered. But there's, I don't know how vibrant our young news reporters are. There's an RTI, right to information, which can be used to ask the president directly whether he has received a petition to take the EC out or not. The Chief Justice question was an interesting question because whereas people may not feel that the processes operating to remove a Chief Justice in the so-called Article 146 has nothing to do with the food that we eat, has nothing to do with the price of kinky. The Electoral Commission is part of the executive, so the Adom-Otchere one does not directly offend the principles of separation of powers. It actually doesn't, because the Electoral Commissioner is part of the executive. It's like the president removing the IGP. The police is part of the executive. The Electoral Commission is part of the executive. The Speaker is part of the legislature. The Clerk of Parliament is legislature. The judiciary is another arm of government. So
the similarity might be in the fact that they are also an independent institution.
I was coming to that. They are independent institutions, so fair enough, you can compare. But in terms of separation of powers, the Adom-Otchere one does not offend it yet, because separation of powers is among three arms of government. Within those arms of government, there may be independent aspects of it. So Shraj is part of the executive, but there's an independent body. Same with the Electoral Commission and same with other bodies. IYOKO is like that as well. But the judiciary is the third arm of government. And to remove the head of the judiciary, and when you are the one operating the article being the head of the executive, given all the background that we have had, the conversations about this Chief Justice and how the decisions that she has made in court, sitting with other people, have become a matter for her impeachment. So if you look at the concerns of, say, the three vacant seats in Parliament, the controversy about whether they were vacant or not, the matter went to court. The Supreme Court gave an unanimous ruling. Justice Tokonu happened to either lead the panel that day or was part of it. The cases about SAL, Justice Tokonu is not the only one who did it. Justice Yawa Pao, in fact, who is quite friendly to the NDC, gave the first major judgment against SAL. It was a unanimous decision in which Tokonu was part of it. Then she was not even Chief Justice at the time. So these are the things that have been, examples that have been said by NDC legal luminaries, raising the concerns that a Chief Justice should be removed. If you look at the process that removed her, there's actually one that is quite bothering. And it is about she asking somebody to go on leave. And a Chief Justice is the head of the administration of the judiciary. She actually asks judges to go on leave. Apart from the Supreme Court, which only sits in Accra, and even that, she can ask a Supreme Court judge to hear a High Court matter in 2nd D, and the Supreme Court judge will be obliged to hear the matter in 2nd D and come back. But the Supreme Court sits in only Accra, so they're not in Kumasi. The Court of Appeal, there are judges in Kumasi. The Chief Justice can transfer as high up a person in the judiciary as a Court of Appeal judge to anywhere, and can transfer all the way to circuit. That's her job. So if she's quote-unquote prosecuted for getting somebody to transfer somebody, and the media have not had the opportunity to look at why was the person transferred, and I'm sure that when the matters come out and the media see why the person was transferred, it will be very shocking. I cannot talk about it now because we still don't know whether under Article 146 process, when the matter is over, you can talk about it.
The committee that sat on it,
that you can talk about it, but I don't know.
The committee that sat on it raised concerns that they had to review 10,000 pages when it comes to evidence brought against the Chief Justice. And then they gave that recommendation to the president that indeed she must go. You feel that they failed to do their job? Is that the case?
Well, I don't know whether they failed to do their job or not, but most of the 10,000 cases that they refer to, which I'm not sure why we can't see it. Pages, which I'm not sure why we can't, because we've heard that we can't see it. Most of it must have come from the Chief Justice, according to what her lawyers are saying, that most of those documents were documents that they submitted. They called the highest number of witnesses, and there are conversations that they actually even subpoenaed people. The people came there and they were not allowed to speak by the chairman of the committee and the committee's rulings. So they really have a story to tell. And if you listen to Newsfile last Saturday, you see the outrage of Ayikwe Otu, which was unfortunate, I have to say. But you can understand his outrage, being a former Attorney General, a seasoned legal luminary, and seeing that some of the fundamental procedures were overlooked, overstepped, and just beaten up at the committee process. He was quite concerned. So it begs the question that this Article 146 process, which we thought we will never need it to remove a Chief Justice, there is an impeachment of a president. We have said that we will never need it. And that is because the president is given a political protection. The political protection in the president's removal is such that whenever the decision is made, Parliament must by 2/3 elect for the president to be impeached. So we assume that whenever somebody is president, he's very likely to have the Parliament. But come 2028, we may very well have a situation where the NPP may win the presidency, but the deficit in Parliament might not be recovered in the same election. So you can go into the Parliament with NDC leading by 10 or 20 or something, and the NPP have the presidency. It is then that the threat to that presidential impeachment will come up, because it's very easy to get in fact, it's easier to get the president than the Chief Justice in 146. Because in the president's process, it says that if he has taken any decision that economically doesn't benefit Ghana, and we can find $1 million in a president's tenure of 4 years, you can find Akufo-Addo impeachment for e-levy. He took the decision for e-levy. It didn't economically benefit Ghana. How do you know whether it benefited Ghana economically or not? You just do a vox pop. And everybody will say that I don't like e-levy, I don't like e-levy. Okay, Mr. President, you took a decision, let's start the process. But the president always knows that Parliament will be for him. But one day, Parliament may not be for the president of Ghana. And that is a plausible outcome in the constitutional arrangement that we have. And then we will see what happens. But that process is put there not so that we can impeach the president. It's put there so that in the extreme of extreme cases, there's something for us to pick and look at. We don't put Article 146 there so that every now and then we are tinkering with removing the Chief Justice, and my party comes, I remove Chief Justice, and my party comes. I mean, we all miss Professor Mills. There was significant pressure on him in 2009, and led by Alhaji Bature, who's gone, who's passed to eternal glory, may he rest in peace. But Alhaji and others heaped significant pressure on Professor Mills to the point where the president had to come out publicly to say that I am not interested in proceeding with an Article 146 process to remove Georgina Wood. I will not do that. And then in the subsequent press conference, the chairman of the party, once again, chairman of the NDC, at that time, Johnson Asidun Katia was general secretary. The chairman was a man they call Wayose, my very good friend, Kwabena, may he rest in peace. He used to be member of parliament for the MPP in 79, and then he became NDC and became his chairman. Kwabena was asked at a press conference that now that the president says that he's not going to remove the chief judge, what would you do? And he meted out the famous words which President Mahama had occasion to refer to last night. He said, there are many ways of killing a cat. That's what he said, that there are many ways of killing a cat. And that's what President Mahama was referring to yesterday, saying he's not a cat hunter or something like that.
Exactly.
But this is the history we have come from. And we would have thought that having achieved this kind of measured precedent in 2009, that perhaps we have put that to some extent behind us. But here we are, we have had a situation where Article 146 had to be invoked, not against a Chief Justice who has done something really sacrilegious in terms of the administration of justice, say telling a judge that don't rule this way, if you rule this way, I'll do this, trying to offer money to a judge that's ruled this way, shifting a judge around.
Let me come in at this point. There are concerns that we should raise the bar when it comes to the amendments of our laws to ensure that the removal of key individuals like the Chief Justice, the President, for example, is very difficult, even if you're going to go through the legal route.
But it is difficult. As it is very difficult. But you have people hiding behind in camera and say that we can't talk about it. We don't want to publish it on television. We don't want to show a lot of the confidence that has occasioned the Ghanaian judiciary, which has helped in the democracy, came in 2013 when the election petition was showed on television. It started in America when the O.J. Simpson trial was showed on television. These things engender confidence in the judiciary, the judicial systems, encourages young people. There are many lawyers today who will tell you that they became lawyers when they watched the election. They wanted to become lawyers when they watched the election petition.
We should make the whole process public.
If you go to America, many of a certain generation of their lawyers decided to be lawyers when they watched the O.J. Simpson trial. So these things are very important. It engenders confidence. And so the Chief Justice went to Supreme Court applying that in spite of the in-camera process, which is to protect the subject, really, she's the subject, she thinks she doesn't need that protection. Can we show it on television? It would have done a lot of good to the process. But somehow or rather, somebody didn't want that exposed. And that's the beginning of the deep thinking and the beginning of where the overthinking political analysts now begin to think, why doesn't somebody want this? Who loses? Who loses when the thing comes on television? And that's a decision.
But if her request is against the law, when the law is clear that some of these cases should be held behind the cameras to ensure that we protect the sanctity of even the position in itself, depending on the issues that will come up.
There's precedent for that. There's precedent for that, not in the statutory law, but there's precedent for that in case law. In the election petition, the actual application had gone to the Supreme Court for the matter to be showed live on television. The Supreme Court had denied the application, I believe, by a 5-2. Had denied the application. Chief Justice Georgina Wood decided to apply an administrative fiat to determine on her own that the thing should be showed on television. If the thing showed on television occasioned financial loss to the state, for instance, today we can prosecute Georgina Wood for occasioning financial loss to the state because she decided against case law. Case law said you can't do it, and they raised all of these issues. Court is this, court is that. That was the Supreme Court decision. She wasn't a member of the panel. She took a decision later on, but it doesn't matter. In the interest of democracy, I think we should do this. Called Ghana Television. It was going to cost a lot of money. The Judicial Service were to pay that money, and Justice Georgina Wood decided, let's show it. So yes, that's why the Chief Justice went to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court have the power to look at these things and make decisions in favor of democracy and development, in favor of the deepening of accountability, and in favor of building our own democracy. They could have made that decision because really, who loses when some of these things come public? When we watched the election petition, it was a win-win-win-win for everyone. Nobody lost. The electoral processes were better defined. We came in with stronger rules. That's why we brought in all this BVMR or all of those things. And the electoral process was supposed to be better thereafter. So once this Article 146 process did not see the light of day for the exposure for people to see it, it began to raise questions. And then at the end of it, listening to the lawyers of the Chief Justice, it's unfortunate that perhaps the members of the committee don't want to speak or they cannot speak because we don't have their side of the story. Yes. So everything we are hearing is one side of the story anyway. I have to admit that at the outset because we really have to hear the other side of the story. But the kinds of things being said, if it happened, even if there are exaggerations and that it did happen, then we really have a lot to look at under the Article 146 process that removed Justice Tokono.
And that should be a job for the Constitutional Review Committee.
I don't think they can do much about it, and I've been hearing that because Article 146 is an entrenched clause. And once an entrenched clause, there's a clear way to amend entrenched clauses, and Parliament has nothing to do with it. I think people don't seem to realize that when an article is entrenched, Parliament has absolutely nothing to do with it in whether it is changed or not. It is just laid before Parliament, if you look at the rules and the Constitution itself, and then it passes to a referendum where 75% of the registered voters must vote and a certain percentage must vote for the new bill, and then it's passed. Parliament will just pass it. They don't have anything to do with it. So you can have all the members of Parliament. If you want to do a constitutional amendment of an entrenched provision, you still need to go through the referendum process only. And I do not see how many more provisions in the Constitution today that are not entrenched, that can have a two-thirds pass it. Those that two-thirds can pass, I think we've done them already. The citizenship one, the minimal one we did, and etc. What is left in the Constitution? The major talking points, ministers and whether they'll come from Parliament or not, an entrenched provision. Everything about the executive is an entrenched provision. Those who were worried about third term and all of that is an entrenched provision. Article 146 is part of the judicial side that is entrenched. So they would have to take Article 146 over to a referendum, and I don't know whether they're going to say amend this and change this or remove it completely. You can't remove it completely because you can't have a situation where there is no way to remove a Chief Justice. No, you can't have that. That doesn't set the balance of scale in constitutional jurisprudence. There has to be a way in which you can remove somebody, but you don't tinker with it often. You do it once in 100 years because in terms of checks and balances, nobody is above the law. And so there has to be a limitation on every power that is exercised under the law.
Okay, let's shift our attention now to the big elephant in the room, really, the job of oral and the concerns being raised about their effectiveness. So much talk, no prosecution yet. The president tried to answer that yesterday, just setting the tone for the conversation, telling us that indeed we are concerned that no prosecution yet. But there's a lot of work going on under the cover. He spoke about the likes of Eric Yako, Gifty Owari, and Osei Asibi, that soon they will all be going through the process with the AG. But what's your thoughts, really?
Well, a couple of questions came up about oral. There was one from a local language journalist who I was so pleased to hear ask about the plea bargaining arrangements. Because I think it's one of the slightly more difficult new laws to explain to the general public, right? This is something that was passed by the previous government. I think Godfred Dame, as Attorney General, championed this. And the concept is really straightforward. Look, in some cases, the criminal case that is being brought against someone revolves around money. Money has been lost to the state. The state wants that money back. If you have that money and are able to offer it back to the state, you have the opportunity to seek a deal with the government. Of course, the government can decide whether or not they are going to take that deal. But at least that opportunity is there. And the concept here is that, look, instead of us spending money to put you in jail, feeding you and all of this, let's get the money back, right? Even if it means that you walk away with much less than you deserve by way of punishment, at the very least, the state doesn't end up, at a loss, at a financial loss on top of everything, right? And the president took the opportunity to explain this quite clearly in answering that question. However, the question was being asked in the context of oral, because oral is all about recovering the loot. So this questioner was really simply asking that, look, is oral just secretly telling us that all the people you've identified as having allegedly swindled the state are going to get away with it as long as they give
if they can pay back? Is that what we signed up for?
That was her actual question, right? The president, of course, answered on the surface. He didn't connect it to oral in that real way that I was expecting, because that is the question he was being asked, okay? And look, let's be real. It is not mutually exclusive that you either go to jail or you pay the money and go free. There are several hundred degrees in between. You could pay back the money and get a lighter sentence. You could pay back the money and still go to jail and do the full sentence. Look, as for paying back the money, the government has all the leverage in the world to push a person who admits to have taken money from the state to give it back. They have all the leverage in the world, and they do not have to actually give that person his entire freedom in exchange. I don't know where that conversation came from. I don't know where that concept came from, and why we seem to be exercising plea bargaining in that absolute way, that it's either you go to jail or you give the money back and you are a free man or woman. I don't know where that came from. That's why it's being communicated.
That's why, as a media, we're quite surprised when the Attorney General, Dominic Aini, told us that they're withdrawing the charges against the former Unibank boss. Just because he paid some money, is that it? So,
paid some money.
Let me get
honest.
Paul's response to that.
Yeah.
Comrade Dufo is walking a free man today because the Attorney General tells us he has paid some money. They've come to some agreement so he can walk free. Is that what we signed up for?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You know, I have a lot of theses about this. Sorry, I write a lot on politics, so I'm very thematic. I have a lot of theses about this. And the thesis here is, for the people of Africa, developing country Ghana, which is the bigger problem? Is it corruption or is it incompetence? Which is the bigger problem? We have been told all the time that the bigger problem is corruption. I beg to differ, and I know that I'm going to get a lot of scrolling for this, but if you engage with the literature well, you may find out that incompetence is a bigger problem, because incompetence is more obvious to determine than corruption. And what has plagued Africa is incompetence. Why do I say that? Ghana has been said to be a poor country, blah, blah, blah. Okay. In 1995, Ghana was a poor country. In 1998, Ghana was a poor country. In 2001, Ghana was a hippie country. Sometime in 2006, somebody came to Ghana, a Ghanaian living here, set up a bank. Today, the bank is profitable, massively profitable. In the poor country, Ghana, the bank that was set up has been profitable. Businesses have come up. Joy FM here, you've advertised businesses that start tomorrow. Indomie noodles started on radio. Today is a huge business in the same Ghana that is not able to develop. What is happening? Is it that the people who set up these private enterprises are able to deliver it in a way that Joy FM started Joy TV way after Ghana Television started? Way after. How does Joy FM start Joy TV and it becomes more impactful than Ghana Television? It speaks to competence. Somebody is making competent decisions. That's what happens in Europe. People are making competent decisions. We have been told that your problem has nothing to do with competence, so we don't even look there. Our problem is corruption. I am angry because somebody stole money. How do we know somebody stole money? We were told by the politicians that somebody stole money. Many years ago, I interviewed Joe Gatti. I'll come to it very quickly. Joe Gatti is a politician. I interviewed him, and he was telling me that politics in Ghana has a very short time to live if things don't change. Because when people are desperate for power, they look at the opponent and say, you're a thief. When a parliamentarian tells me that an NDC parliamentarian is a thief, I believe it. When an NDC parliamentarian tells me that MPP is a thief, I believe it. So the easiest way to get the people on your side is to say that he is a thief. And that was what has been happening. When now you are told to show that he's a thief, then you are scrambling. Then your base is saying, what's happening to Oral? The things that Oral anticipated, did they really happen? The people that they said they are thieves, were they really thieves? Or that somebody was taking a political advantage of people's situation and suggesting to them that you are like this because somebody has stolen? Maybe nobody has stolen. Oral, this is not the first oral we're having. President Kufuor's oral was even greater. He set up courts, called them fast-track high courts, so that they will fast-track the process of the thieves. Chachuchi Kata got into trouble by challenging the basis of the fast-track high court. The fast-track high court got established on the Supreme Court review. How many people were convicted by the fast-track high court up to today? How many? Fast forward to the next election, 2008. NDC championing it. They are stealing Ghana at 50 money. That Ghana at 50, they stole money. When the government won the election in January and February, like what has happened now, if you are driving in town, you're a young lady like you, and you're driving a Jaguar, they'll seize it. And they'll tell you that it's from Ghana at 50. I was driving a Jaguar then. It was seized. Fortunately for me, it was seized right on the Spintex Road in front of where I bought the car, because the showroom is right there. So when they seized it, I got and I said, I bought the car from this shop. Let's cross the road. We went into the road. They said, they said, yeah, he bought the car from here. They said, you are a very lucky MPP man like you see. This is 2009. How many people were convicted under Ghana at 50? Zero. Absolutely zero. For all the noise that was made about Ghana at 50, they've stolen money. Ghana at 50, they've stolen money. Fast forward 2016. MPP campaign. Brass branding was a big deal. Corruption. President Mahama has a house in Dubai. It was said. Everybody. How many people were prosecuted? Zero. So we have to begin to tax our politicians that don't take the easy way out to win our support. Do some work on policy. Do some proper work and come and show us that this is what has happened. That's the kind of thing that permits me to say Dr. Bawumia was doing in his lectures. He wasn't saying anybody's a thief. He was saying that these and these things are happening. It suggests that there's something wrong somewhere. We bought into it then, we don't buy into it now. So it is the bane of the politicians. When they want to win power, they just come and tell us somebody is a thief. Oral is struggling, and Oral will struggle because the basis to prove a thief in court is far more difficult than on the campaign platform when you flag somebody's name and say that he's a thief. That's easy. So Oral must come and begin to admit. This is the first process of Attorney General prosecution where we have seen that Attorney General seems to have put the plea bargaining at the front. It seems to be the first thing he's talking about. And all the lawyers are wondering, what is Attorney General saying? So people must come and plea bargain when the people say, I haven't stolen. Now, the question is this. When you go to court and you fail to prosecute somebody, does it mean the person hasn't stolen? It may not necessarily mean so. It is just that the standards that you have to show in the court, the standard of proof is 100%. You have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. So if you're able to prove a case 95% and the court is working normally, they will not convict the person on 95% of you having established it. You have to establish 100%. So if you watch European countries and advanced democracies, never would you hear a British parliamentary person, candidate or member of parliament, call another person a thief. They never do that. They hardly do that. In fact, Tony Blair was said to have been investigated by police also relating to the construction of, I think, Heathrow Airport or Wembley Stadium or something like that. Nobody even was told. The constable went to his house as prime minister or former prime minister and interviewed him and they left. But the way in which our politicians here, the laziness of our politicians to just find something against their opponents so that they can win power is what has brought us to this level where now Oral is, and then the Deputy Attorney General is frustrated, says that we are doing the work, we are doing the work. Betty Mould sang the same song. Gloria Kufu sang the same song. They are putting pressure on me, but I'm doing the work and it's not happening because the things that we say in the campaign, we know that we cannot establish it in court.
Kojo, you want to say something?
Can I just say this, that yesterday when the president skirted the oral issue and simply explained plea bargaining to the journalist, he even said then that plea bargaining must come from the accused. So why is Dominic Aine telling us about plea bargaining? Is he the accused? Why is he the one proposing plea bargaining? Can we let that sink in? That's all I wanted to add.
Let's look at another key thing that came up yesterday, apart from oral illegal mining. The concern about the economy. When this administration started, we saw the city doing excellently well. And we're mostly surprised what was happening. Some economists were of the opinion that, no, there's something wrong somewhere because the Bank of Ghana is tampering with our currency. And then the IMF came to tell us that, hey, hasten slowly, BOG, because this will not work. And now, as most people would say, we're finding our level. What's your thoughts about the president's response on how he has managed the economy?
The president admits that Bank of Ghana has done some finessing of the city. He said it and said, but they stopped. Now, to me, that made perfect sense. The city was really out of control. And the Bank of Ghana put in some measures, none of which were sustainable, by the way. None of them could be long-term, permanent, controls of the city's, depreciation. But they all had an impact. And we saw that impact happening really quickly, right? For me, that was important. But the ultimate thing now is, how stable can it become? What parameters can it fluctuate between, which we can all plan for, so that you don't sleep, wake up in the morning and it's lost 15% of its value? That we don't need. What we need is something we can plan with. So we should be able to wake up in September and quite clearly anticipate what the city's value will be in December. Right? That's what the economy needs. Now, that can't come from Bank of Ghana's shenanigans. That can't give us that. All the other long-term things, the import substitution, all the big things, the big problems that no government in the Fourth Republic has successfully solved, those are the ones that will bring actual permanent stability to our currency. But the president admits that, yes, some of what we've seen came from Bank of Ghana making specific decisions. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's my view. First of all, I actually think it was needed, it was important, and there are even more things that we can expect Bank of Ghana to do to help shore the thing up small. But the ultimate and final solution will have to come from solving the big problems of our economy. It can't come from just continuing to come up with little policies like the recent one where now no company can quote a government contract in dollars, right? That's from the finance ministry. No company can bring a quote of a government contract in dollars. It must all be in cedis. Brilliant. Okay, that's good. These are some of the little things. All the controls over the repatriation and, the influx of these little things will give you temporary results. But who's working on the permanent stuff? Because yesterday I didn't hear much about that. But the president does admit Bank of Ghana did its thing. But they've stopped, apparently.
Paul, let me come to you. Your assessment of the economy under this administration, especially the president's thoughts about how the city is performing so far and their plan moving forward to ensure that our numbers are favorable.
Well, it's also a bigger problem, but I think the president was truthful on one matter that he confirmed that the Bank of Ghana, he confirmed the suspicion of the World Bank and the IMF. It was just unfortunate because he had said earlier that the gains that we're seeing were as a result of the gold board, something like that. He gave that reason before, and now he says that it is true that the Bank of Ghana was doing something interesting. But the bigger conversation is about rating agencies and what role the rating agencies have in our system to rate it the way they want to rate it. Akufo-Addo complained about the rating agencies before, and now the rating agencies in one quarter of the same year said the Ghanaian currency is the best in the world, and this another quarter of the same year gave indications that the currency was not doing too well. We have had government communication challenging the assertion that it was the worst in the world, so we don't know where we are on that. But certainly they said that the appreciation had declined significantly. It's the rating agencies, and that's the bigger problem that we need to discuss. How we can secure our economy, its database, its analysis from some of these rating agencies, how we can build our own capacity to be able to conduct our own ratings, so that when the rating agencies want information from Ghana, they just take it from Ghana. I believe that many years ago, or perhaps in other countries, when the rating agencies are looking for the numbers of people in the university, they have to guess it. Because if you don't have the data, they will guess it. But today, if they are looking for the number of people in the University of Ghana, University of Ghana has the data, they rely on them. The reason why we are susceptible to these rating agencies is that we don't have our own data. And so the shiftings in our economy, we are not able to properly assess. We don't have a data of how many people sell kenke in Ghana. We don't have a data of how many people sell bread in Ghana. If you go to England and you ask them how many people sell bread on Regent and Oxford Street, they'll tell you immediately. If a new bread seller comes, they know that they've now licensed one person to add. How many people sell awuza cocoa in Ghana? We can gather them by district by just counting. We have endless national service people. We don't use them to do this data analysis. I've always said the very funny one since I was in Presec up to today. If you ask how many people travel from 37 to Medina in Trotro every day, we don't know. We don't have all that information. So these rating agencies, when they come to pick up economic analysis, it was when Data Bank started the Consumer Price Index about 35 years ago that Joy FM was reporting the Data Bank Index. That's when we got a little bit of data collection in that space, apart from what Bank of Ghana has. So really, the big question is to develop systems that will be able to pull out data from how our economy is working, so that if 1 billion is thrown in the economy, we hear now that Cocoa Board is expecting some money. There should be data analysis available, whether by civil society, Imani or Joy FM or whoever, that this 1 billion that's coming to our economy today will be able to achieve this and that and that and that. But we don't have that data. And that's what Akufo-Addo was talking about, that African countries need to come together, spend money, build the data, so that we are not susceptible to these international organizations who can say anything at any time, depending on many, many factors.
Interesting. Let's talk about another key concerns that was raised yesterday by journalists. And we wanted to know, really, if government will be going back to the capital market. It was one of the key concerns that was raised. And the president sought to answer that question. He says we should hasten slowly. We're doing well without going to the capital market. But then looking at his response yesterday and looking at our economy, is it avoidable, really? In the end, you would still have to go to the capital market, wouldn't we?
Well, the longer we can postpone it, the better, if you ask me. Because, I mean, look, this was my biggest criticism of Ken Ofori-Atta as a finance minister. He ran Ghana like a hedge fund. He ran it like he was using other people's money to speculate and see if he can make some money. That was my personal view of how Ken Ofori-Atta was, executed the job of finance minister. And to me, it was the avenue through which the bottom fell out of our economy. Because when you are gambling with other people's money, you don't feel any sense of ownership. Besides, you make money whether they lose or gain. Mm. And you know what was happening. Every time we went to borrow, his private company that he had funded made money. And nobody challenged that, by the way. We came to normalize that. That is a shocker to me. So today, if we have a president who says, I'm not in a hurry to go back and borrow, for me it's good news. Because I'll tell you this, it's not like the borrowing that we are going to borrow, we are going to see any impactful use of it.
It's inevitable, isn't it?
Is it? Look, I wish that what Paul says about us removing the focus from corruption and focusing on competence, I wish we would do that. Because if we would, I can assure you that the nation Ghana would absolutely not need as much begging and borrowing as we do today. We have far more natural advantages than countries like Malaysia, Singapore, these Asian tigers that have overtaken us, and we are now looking to them as examples and traveling there to go and learn how they learned from us. The ridiculousness of it. Right? If only we would focus on getting things right, being competent, we wouldn't need to go begging anyone. We wouldn't need to fly in private jets to go and beg people who make decisions sitting on benches and then come back and chop it in our mouths. So no, I am not in a hurry to go back and borrow. It's not like in the absence of borrowing, some great development is passing us by. It's not. Because if we go and borrow, what will we use it for anyway? What? What did we use borrowing for in the past? So no, I have no great expectation that when we suddenly reappear on the market and they welcome us with open arms, it will suddenly open the floodgates of development in Ghana. It will not. So if we are not going, it's fine. Let's try and manage with what we have for as long as we can. Whether it's inevitable or not, I don't look there. At least tomorrow will be another day that I wake up without us going to leverage our children's future on the Eurobond market.
As we wrap up the conversation, one of the key things that came up yesterday was assault on journalists. The GJA president, Dumfo, raised that concern as to what is being done to protect journalists. And the president gave a response. Paul, were you pleased with the president's response as to what will be done to protect journalists? He goes on to state that he's a journalist himself because he's a member of GJA in right standing, by the way. But looking at the cases we're recording, especially after Abdegma North, Carlos Kaloni, my colleague, assaulted whilst doing his job. Is the state doing enough to protect journalists? And what he's proposing, sensitization between state agencies like the police and journalists, is that the way to solve this issue?
Well, I think that we've come a long way, and we shouldn't be... the president seemed concerned that the security agencies are not aware, or they don't know that this person is a journalist and they assault him and all of that. It's complicated if there's a thinking on that side.
But in the case of Carlos Kaloni...
Are you referring to the Spintex Road?
Yes, Magdan issue. In Carlos Kaloni's case, he kept saying that he's a journalist, and he even raised his mic flag.
Yeah, but he whipped the interviewee because he said, who is this? And he said, there's an eyewitness, and he whipped him.
Yeah.
So maybe on camera, we didn't see him attacking the journalist.
So all these days, we should start wearing like a tag when we're going out? What exactly can we do?
I'm not sure why, the issue about the security not being able to assault people at a scene or a matter that has created a scene should be basic for all Ghanaians. It's not just journalists. It should be so fundamental to when the British police arrive at a scene, they don't start caning people. Nobody does that. So you can make an announcement and say that, hold on, the security have taken over, all of you move this way. We don't want you to be looking at it because it's this and that and that. Those of you who are reporters, come this way, identify yourself, and then you can take control. But you don't start whipping. But what the president seems to say is that they should know that a journalist is doing his work. Any Ghanaian can decide to stand there and watch a demolition. You can't whip him. You can't cane him. You can't do that. So I really, security agencies should not have a mandate in keeping the peace, except where they have been threatened, to beat up anybody, whether it's a journalist or it's not a journalist. When it comes to journalists, it's a more complicated matter because sometimes we as news houses, we don't want you to know that we are filming. So we will send you a Joy FM branded person to film. But we have many other people who are also filming so that we can get the different angles of the story. That's how we do our work. We have the liberty under the Constitution to tell a story. And indeed, if you look at the Constitution right now, every Ghanaian has the liberty to tell the story. It doesn't have to be somebody who works in a media house. Any Ghanaian can see it and film and then send it to Joy FM or put it on their Facebook page and say, look, this is what I saw somebody doing. So if you say you are looking for journalists to isolate them so that you can, deal with the rest, everyone there, every eyewitness there constitutes some form of journalism, especially in the expression of it. Now that everyone has a phone, that's journalism. So when we go to the Accra Sports Stadium and something has happened and people are filming, they are all filming for public purposes. You can't cane or beat anybody. So I'm not sure what the police or the military are going to be told in this 35 years of constitutional democracy, that when you go to Magdan site and they are doing a demolition and you see people standing there, you beat them. And up until today, there was a release that day that some investigation is being conducted, blah, blah, blah. Up until today, we have not seen anything said about that soldier who, in military uniform, whipped up the journalist and the person was interviewing. In fact, within 5 minutes of that happened, everyone who was part of the operation knew who that person was. They knew because it's an operation. So they set out from national security, they knew. And they just issued a statement to just calm us down and say that, oh, don't worry, we are looking at it. And up till now, nothing has happened.
Isn't that one of the biggest problems we're facing when it comes to prosecution? Some of these cases we've reported of assault on journalists. How many people are even behind bars? From as far back as Latif Idrisu's case. How many people are behind bars?
For me, it's even the posturing of leaders. Okay, the posturing of leaders. There's always something missing from the posturing of leaders when they communicate about attacks on journalism. In the previous government, Kojo Nkrumah, as Minister of Information, would always issue a statement when a journalist is attacked or when there's an incident that impinges on the freedom that journalists are supposed to enjoy. And at the end of his statement, he would then add, but journalists should also be responsible. Journalists also have a responsibility to do responsible journalism.
Is that what was said?
Kojo Nkrumah, every statement he has ever issued.
Okay, you're talking about Kojo's days.
So now you ask yourself, what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean that when you, as a journalist, when you are not responsible, you should be beaten? Is that what it means? Would you go to a rape victim and tell her that next time you be responsible? It's very sad that you've been raped, but you must be a responsible victim next time. Would you do that?
No, absolutely
So why
not.
would the current president, I'm now coming to the current president, John Mahama, why would he say, in response to the uptick in attacks on journalists, say that he's going to get the media to meet with the security services and have them, I don't know, what is going to happen at that meeting? Is the media going to tell the security service, oh, we are journalists, so don't beat us? And the security service will be like, we didn't know. Okay, thank you for informing us. Mr. President, we appreciate you bringing us together. Is that what's going to happen? Because if that's what's going to happen, then what is the point of that meeting? The president is commander-in-chief. of the armed forces. In essence, there is not, I mean, he commands them.
Exactly.
So all it should take is one command, and this should stop. Why is he bringing the victim and the attacker together for a conference? Why is that the solution? There's always something missing when it comes to dealing head-on with media attacks. Every political regime we've had recently gets it wrong. And it's because their attitude towards journalists and who we are is skewed.
Paul, as we wrap up 1 minute, how do we get it right?
Well, whilst we wrap up, Kojo Jackson, I'd like you to read this text.
You said
it's Kojo Ponkroma is sort of responding to it.
Okay, all right. Oh goodness. Okay.
Can you see?
Please tell a little.
I can read it for you.
Yes, please read it out.
Okay, so he says, he made a point about Kojo Ponkroma, who is watching.
Yeah.
And he says, what Kojo Jackson has just said is false. I never said that. He says, please tell them I've texted you saying they should pull up any of my statements. Yes.
Okay.
So he says that Kojo is challenging you that
all right,
you can pull up any of his statements.
Okay. So I'll let my producer get on that right now so that we can fact check some of the claims that has been made. But as we wrap up the conversation, Paul, 1 minute, just tell me, how can we get it right when it comes to assault on journalists? Kojo's of the opinion that successive governments have gotten it wrong. How do we fix it?
Well, I mean, the political will must come. And you know that politicians like an unweakened media. Every politician likes an unweakened media. Only few of them, not every, most of them, only few of them want a media that's vibrant. So if the politicians show the will that they are happy with an interrogating media, I think the body language will transcend to the security. I'm guessing that the security know that what they are doing will go unpunished. They are aware. They know that they may even be cheered up by some politicians. So that's why they do it. If the security agencies who work directly under the control of the political authority are clear in their mind that abusing not just a journalist, but anyone, misapplying your whip to any Ghanaian will be dealt with, they will stop that.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your time here on The Pulse. My colleague Kojo Jackson as well. And we're still trying to get that statement, just to put it up for you. But we've run out of time, so in subsequent bulletins, this is something we'll be fleshing out further. You can share your thoughts with us on all our social media handles. We'll be reading them out in subsequent bulletins as we just look at fallout from the president's encounter with journalists yesterday. My name is Faustina Safo. Unfortunately, Kemni couldn't join us, as well as Alfredo Kansi. They promised to join us tomorrow, and so we'll have that conversation as well here on The Pulse. Have a pleasant day as you enjoy the rest of our programs.